Oh, look, we're live, pal.
Oh my gosh. Hi, everyone. We're live. So exciting. Welcome to Hidden Gems Podcast. And this is the show that we do every week where we talk about films that are on the streaming services that are hidden gems, a little bit deeper cuts, and we have a ton of fun doing it. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey, Rachel, and hey, everyone. It's great to be with all of you as always. And well, last week I watched five of Rachel's picks. Well, now Rachel has given me the keys to the kingdom, and I have given her five of my recommendations. And I gotta
Yeah.
say, this was very this was very interesting because as I was coming up with the list in my head, I was thinking to myself, should I give her a couple softballs or should I just go all curveballs? And I gave her like one or two softballs and the rest are curves because I just wanted to see what her reaction would be. And I won't say which ones right now. We'll talk about that later. But as we were discussing it, I was saying to myself, Rachel is more open to things. She just either doesn't want to admit it or just hasn't realized it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I really do try. And sometimes that's the fun of doing things like this is it gets you out of your comfort zone and watching things. But yeah, you did give me quite a variety in your picks. Which was fun, and I appreciate it. But yeah, we decide every once in a while when we're having a particularly busy week, we like doing these live episodes because it's just a little bit less work for both of us. And it's a nice time to get a chance to talk with our viewers and listeners. So if you are watching, you can put your comments in the chat room, and if you have any questions about anything, not even just the ones we're talking about, put it in the chat room and we can answer your questions. It'll be really fun. And if we have time at the end, we might even do a few little Q&As, kind of like what we do I've done in the past for a live stream. There's just an energy about live stream that's fun. I mean, I enjoy both, but it's fun to do the live streams.
Yeah, there's an old saying that anything can happen on live TV, and there will be certain things that won't be happening. Let's just say that. But I remember because peek into my life, I actually have a TV broadcast certificate from my community college. So if I were to say hired on to like run a switchboard or operate a camera, then I could conceivably do that. And I helped produce a lot of live TV episodes. So running live is very unpredictable, but also a lot of fun all at once because there's the element of what could possibly happen here, and that's really appealing to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, have you been watching anything recently of note that you want to talk about? We'll talk about all the stuff I've been watching.
Well, mostly it's been stuff for the AFI project. Like I actually the other day I just rewatched In the Heat of the Night for the first time in a really long time, and talk about a movie that's actually pretty relevant nowadays with the whole George Floyd business. I think that movie has just aged tremendously well, and I'll talk more about it in the review, but let's just say that director Norman Jewison is one of those directors from like that early 70s period that nobody talks about. He directed In the Heat of the Night, he directed Cannonball Run, he directed Rollerball, or no wait, he didn't direct Cannonball Run, he directed Rollerball, the original. He directed the original Thomas Crown Affair, and he directed one of my all-time favorite movies, Fiddler on the Roof. So he had a varied catalog, and he knocked it out of the ballpark every time. We talk about names from the 70s like Spielberg and Scorsese and all of them, and they're like upper crust. You can't touch them. But then there are these other directors that did consistently great work, and no one talks about them, especially Jewison, who in the Heat of the Night won Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
And don't forget about my favorite, Moonstruck.
There you go. I was just about to say, like, what movie of hers is like, oh yeah, it's Moonstruck.
Yeah, I love it so much. I'll have to make that a you pick that you have to watch one of these days.
Yeah, that's definitely a way to get me to watch it. And then Also on the list was All the President's Men, which I'm actually only about halfway through. And I'm really enjoying it so far. It's my first time watching it. It feels a little bit like a documentary, and I mean that in a nice way. It's not this big grand of we are going after the president. It's like, no, this is like very much like you're following two reporters on what could conceivably be the most the biggest case of the biggest case against the U.S. president ever. And like I said, I'm only halfway through, but I think it's riveting.
Yeah, I know you're not. People don't sometimes like it when you criticize classics, but I saw it after I saw Spotlight, which I loved, and I wasn't that impressed. To me, the problem that I felt like with All the President's Men is I felt like it was very clinical. Like I never felt like I got to know either of the people very well, like get into their heart of who they are. Whereas like in Spotlight, I felt like I got to know them so much better. And this was I felt a little more sort of checking off boxes.
In Spotlight, there were these little moments, like Rachel McAdams' character, I
Yeah.
want to say, mother or grandmother, goes to one of the Catholic churches that they're investigating, and there's the moment where they realize that the Boston Globe had actually published a similar story to what they're investigating, but it got buried because hearts and minds and all of that dumb stuff, and you're immediately just crestfallen. But I think in a mild defense of All the President's Men, I think this was just after the Watergate case wrapped up. This movie was released in '76, and Nixon resigned in either '73 or '4. My history, I'm normally good with dates, but not this time. So I think maybe the clinical part was a bit of a choice. I liked it, but I can see why you wouldn't like it, because
I was disappointed because I was expecting it to be, I guess, maybe different than it ended up being from what people had, there are all these people saying, oh, Spotlight's no, All the President's Men. And so then I go and watch it and I'm just like, I like Spotlight so much better than this. And it just felt very workmanlike to me. And I think that was probably in the intent, but I wanted to get to know like their character a little bit more, and it'd be less like going to the office kind of type of thing. But I don't know. I think that was partly my expectations.
There's barely even a score so far in All the President's Men. I mean, I'm only about the halfway point, so maybe there's some music there also, but no score that I've seen. And as far as looking at my board over here, I recently rewatched La La Land for my upcoming video on Sunday, where I take a deep dive into that movie. I'm going to be watching Whisper of the Heart for the first time in a couple of days for my I Finally Watched series. My dad and I are going to go see Mortal Kombat tomorrow night because he's really itching to see it, though the reviews I have read/watched are not great, including yours, Rachel. So,
well, I gave it a 5 out of 10, so it was right in the middle on it. I really debated. I was very close to either just barely going positive, barely going negative, like right on the edge. So I didn't think it was terrible. I just thought that it depends on how satisfied you are by action. Like if that's all it really takes and you don't really care that the acting is terrible and the writing isn't terrible and you just want some fun action, then you'll be fine.
Yeah,
which is fine.
I'm more of a casual Mortal Kombat player. The most I ever played was in college. I was in the video game club, and literally Mortal Kombat X was what we played all the time. That and Super Smash Brothers. But
yeah.
I've played my fair share of the modern Mortal Kombat, and there are two schools of thought: lore versus gore, or gore versus lore. Meaning there are people that just play Mortal Kombat for the fighting stuff, and then there are others who get invested in Scorpion's backstory and Sub-Zero's backstory and Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade and Raiden, and I could go on. And I never really classified that as the two schools until I watched Jeremy Johns' review of the movie, when he described it as gore versus lore and lore versus gore. And I was like, Oh my God, those are the two schools of thought. I never classified them by those terms before, but
Mhm.
there you go.
And this one is definitely gore versus lore.
That's what it sounds like from literally every review I've seen. It's like the action's pretty good. Rest is.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to hear what you think. We'll talk about another movie today that's gore versus lore.
Oh yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yes. But it was fun to go back to a critic screening. I missed those. I haven't been to one in a long time. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. And what else did I see this week?
You went to the theater a couple times.
What did I see? My brain is just so
You went to
I
see it
went and saw, this wasn't this week, it was last week. I went and saw Wolfwalkers
again.
at the theater, and that was so fun. I love it so much.
So wait, Wolfwalkers is exclusive to Apple, I thought.
Yes, and so probably just for the Oscars, they announced that they were having a special screening for just 3 days in theaters. And so we actually had to drive, my friend Jen and I had to drive all the way to Orem, which is like 35 minutes in order to see it. But we got to see it. It was really fun.
My first and only screening that I went to was in Orlando, which is a comfortable hour drive if you can negotiate I-4. I mean, sometimes it's traffic, so it means it's an hour 30, but this time it was an hour. I was lucky. It was Operation Finale, that World War II movie on the mission to get Adolf Eichmann. I thought the movie was really good, but
with Oscar Isaac?
Oscar Isaac, Ben Kingsley, there's a couple of others, but I know I was at a screening because there was a scene of black text that said "Scene not finished yet," and I'm like,
oh
boy.
If you had an early screening, I've only ever had one screening like that, and that was actually for The Greatest Showman. Believe it or not, they showed it to us probably 3-4 months early, like quite a bit early. They didn't have any of the special effects or any of the other things, and so they picked it because that movie was just like made for Utah. It is such a Utah movie, and they sold more tickets per capita at the one of the big theaters out here than in the whole world to Greatest Showman. So I'm like, very smart place to do your screening. And so they called a bunch of us that had some negative critiques. They called us down, and we all was like sitting in a circle, and they're asking us.
You went to the principal's office.
Yeah, they're asking us, and everybody was giving their lame answers. Nobody's giving, like, they want us to give the feedback. That's why we're here. This was before I was a real critic and everything. Anyway, and because I couldn't go to a thing like this now that I'm on Rotten Tomatoes, but and so I said that I didn't think that the singer who played the opera singer it was just Rebecca Ferguson, and I was just like, it's not good enough. She's supposed to be this amazing singer, right, that known throughout the world, and said she's not good enough. And everybody was like, ooh.
That is an interesting critique.
And they dubbed her in the end. So I like to think that maybe that was because of my feedback. Sorry, Rebecca Ferguson. But yeah, that's the only time I've ever been to a screening like that. And they had a screening in, what was it? Oh gosh, it was in like January. They had a screening for Boss Baby 2, an early screening, but I wasn't allowed to go because I was a critic.
Wasn't allowed or chose not to.
And some of my friends went though, and they were giving back notes and stuff like that. It's a fun opportunity if you ever get a chance. It's pretty fun to be. It's basically a folks group.
For me though, I'm a little spoiled by choice because literally 5 minutes up the road for me, or about 20 minutes if I walk really fast, is my local Regal, which just announced they're reopening
Uh,
for the long haul on May 14th, which is my
mm.
birthday. So
Yeah,
everything.
ours is opening about I think on May 7th, our Regal. And so that'll be, aside from the art house still hasn't opened, and I don't know why. It's We're over 50% vaccinated. We're very safe. I don't understand why they're not opening the art house theaters, but those are the only two left after Regal opens back up. But yeah, I have a bunch that are real close. It just so happened that the only place that were doing Wolfwalkers was in Orem. And so we had to drive all the way to the Cinemark there.
You should have sent them an email being like, I am the biggest animation fan ever. Like,
Yeah.
hook a sister up, will you?
I mean, technically, I could have just watched it at home on Apple, but I wanted to see it on the big screen. And when they first brought it to theaters, it was only in theaters for one weekend in November. I had other things going on. I was like, I'll just see it next week. Gone. It was gone. I was devastated. So
But
anyway, that was fun to get to see. And then I went to a live theater. I've been to 2 live performances, which has been so much fun because I adore live theater. It means so much to me. And I went to see Les Miserables at Hale Theater in Sandy, which is a really great local professional theater. If you ever come visit, we'll definitely go see a show. And I love Les Mis. I adore it. I mean, it was after The Little Mermaid, it was the first like music I ever fell in love with. And when I was in high school, I knew every line to every song. They had the 10th anniversary concert, which is amazing. And I knew that so well. And we had the option for our choir class, we had the option of going to see either Cats or Les Mis as part of our competition that we were in New York City.
In the words of that knight from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you chose wisely.
That's right.
and as far as us seeing a live show together, it's a date, and I won't be late.
That's right. It would be so fun. And they just do a great job. It was really well done. I mean, I had like a few little nitpicks. My only nitpick was I felt that they have a stage that moves around and great configures, and it's a fancy stage because it's theater in the round. But they had this, because Les Mis is known for having a revolving stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the stage, that's what it's known for. But the stage was very static for Les Mis, so that meant they, like the Thénardier's song "Master of the House." It was to the other side of the theater. I hardly got to see them at all. And whereas if they'd had a revolving stage, I don't understand why they made that choice. So that was my only nitpick with it, but it was so fun and so great to be back at the theater and being a live performance. And then this week I went and saw a show called Ain't Misbehavin', which is a jazz show. And that was really fun. The highlight of it was the incredible pianist that they had, who was just going, I mean, unbelievable workout, marathon. He was great. And then the live orchestra, jazz orchestra, was really fun. So
yeah, you get a real good orchestra. It's like a high that you just don't want to.
And I missed it so much. So it was a real treat.
Yes, I'm kind of holding out to hopefully they bring some form of a performance of Phantom of the Opera close to me, because I saw it on Broadway and I loved it. It's one of my favorite live theater experiences, because I'll admit I was 10. I was kind of a little young to be seeing Phantom of the Opera, but you don't pass up an opportunity to see the longest running Broadway musical of all time in the theater in which it started, in the Majestic. And it was just fantastic. And I had no idea it was even inspired by a movie. I didn't even realize that until a few years ago. So I saw the movie with Lon Chaney, The Man of a Thousand Faces.
Oh, well, and then there's a novel too.
Yeah, La Fontaine de Opera. I'm not French, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah. Well, Fan of the Opera. It's funny you mentioned that because that was one of the first shows that I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah, I went with my grandma in San Francisco. And then I saw the I saw my friend, one of my teachers at school was in West Side Story. Those were the two like earliest shows that I saw, which are pretty funny shows for your first shows, but they're pretty dark. But I really loved them. I just love live theater so much. And so I'm going to continue, and I'm actually seeing a total of 6 shows in the next like 6 weeks. So I can't wait.
You got some catching up to do.
All right. Well, let's get started reviewing these picks that you gave for me. So what is the first movie that you picked for me?
So the first movie that I gave you is on HBO Max, and it is Grumpy Old Men. This is a movie that holds a very dear place in my heart. This is one of the first movies that had like a ton of like curse words in it, and I picked up on it, and I won't expound the details, but let's just say I got in trouble in school because of basically, to make a long story short, one of my bullies was trying to push in on me, and like he's like, morning, and I responded to him by saying, morning, D-head. And well, one trip to the principal's office later, I never said that again.
That kind of happened to me when believe it or not, when I was younger. I had overheard, I think, something on television, and I had said it at school and gotten in trouble. And so I went up to my mom, and because I was worried that I was going to accidentally say a word that we weren't supposed to say. And so I went up to my mom and I said, Mom, can we say all the words that we're not supposed to say? She's like, no,
of course not.
So I understand that. There is a fair amount of swearing in this movie. It earns its R rating. But I enjoyed it. I had seen it before, but I think it had been quite a while. And one thing that was kind of funny to me is that with like my perspective now is just turning 40, and they didn't seem that old. Like, yes, they're old, but like I think at one point Jack Lemmon says he's 68, and my dad is 68, so it's just kind of like, I don't know, it was just a weird
they're not like country club. They're not like nursing home old yet. Like, they still have a few good years left in them.
Yeah, but when I was younger, they seemed super old. That's what I was saying. And now they didn't seem that old to me. I mean, so, you think by the way that they were acting that this was like they were about to die old, like so old.
Something does happen to Jack Lemmon's character. I won't go too deep into it. That is like oh boy, like what's happening here? But other than that, yeah, I see what you said.
But this was written by Mark Steven Johnson, and it was kind of fun now to watch it in retrospect because I got a chance to interview Mark Steven Johnson for his movie Love Guaranteed that was on Netflix, and that was really, really fun. And so that, I don't know, it's just kind of, this was kind of his baby when he first got into movies, and so it was sort of fun in retrospect to also watch it. But this is just my kind of movie. It's even, most of it is set in Christmas. That I like movies about kind of grumpy old people, even if they're not that old. And it had a pretty good supporting cast with Anne Margaret and Burgess Meredith, Daryl Hannah, Ozzie Davis, like just a pretty good supporting cast.
Pop, someone moved into the Klickner place. A woman? Yeah. Did you mount her? Oh, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, he is extremely naughty, Burgess Meredith's character.
If I had your energy, I'd be mounting every woman in Wabasha. Rest in peace, Burgess Meredith. You were taken from us far too soon.
Yeah, I forgot that how much of the movie revolved around ice fishing.
Oh yeah, that's like those two's favorite activity. They
Mhm.
literally just ice fish all day and
Yeah,
play pranks on each other. Walter
yeah,
Matthau's screwing with Jack Lemon's TV, Jack Lemon's storing fish in Walter Matthau's car.
right.
It's just a big old game of pranked, I guess,
Yeah.
with a love story thrown in there too.
That wouldn't be too bad of a hobby. I mean, I don't like being cold, so I don't think I would enjoy it that much, but like having that little house that you could hang out in and kind of make your own and that would be fun.
Yeah, and in the sequel, Grumpier Old Men, it does take place in warmer weather, and they do fish then. So
All
fishing
right.
is a year-round tradition for them.
Hmm. That was fun. Well, what was your second recommendation?
Before we move on, what was your favorite scene, or did you have a favorite?
What was my favorite scene? Um, I
Because I'll tell you my favorite.
I think
Uh,
I liked when he went up to the bar on Christmas Eve. You know, because I'm a Christmas person, and that whole scene between the two of them was really good.
that scene is very good, but my two favorite scenes are when Jack Lemon's character finds out that Chuck died, and
Mm.
they don't show anything, and that was before, and that was after that whole Chuck monologue where he was like, because I was awakened, I was alive, I was a man full of passion, it was like being young again, and like literally that was like his last day on Earth, and it was sad. And then cut to the next scene where Walter Matthau's just come back from a date with Anne Margaret, and Jack Lemmon's just chopping wood, and the two share like a mutual thing, and they get into an argument, and then they're like, "You want to go?" And they're like, "Let's go." And then they're charging along the fence, and they're like, "I'm going to do to you what I should have done in 1936," and then just ranting and raving at each other, and then Walter Matthau's like, "Well, come on then, shrimp." And then Lemon's like, "It's not worth it." And then they charge back into their houses, and that's just a great scene. I love that.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, what did you pick next?
So this is curveball number one. This is on Canopy, and it is Apocalypto, or Mel Gibson's Apocalypto. This movie takes place during the Mayan Empire. It's all about a young Mayan man who is taken to be sacrificed to the gods, but he escapes and he tries to find his way back to the love of his life around the time that the Mayan Empire is about to fall at the hands of some Spaniards. So I was like very like as I was typing this out, like this list to you, I was like, do I really want to give her Apocalypto? Like, should I give her something else? And then I was like, let's see what happens. And what let's see what happens. Did you like it?
You know, it was an experience, and I'm glad that I had the experience. I did. I am. So I guess I liked it on that level. There were definitely some parts that I closed my eyes because it was very,
Yeah.
very brutal and very violent. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I do appreciate the fact that I don't think I'll ever see a movie like this ever again, and I don't think there ever has been a movie ever like this ever before. It is very unique, and so I really appreciated it on that level.
Yeah, Mel Gibson as a filmmaker is kind of like Clint Eastwood in that they don't make standard movies. They make very much their own style of movies, and in that regard, it's kind of like Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to absolutely despise it. And sometimes there's no middle ground, but in some cases there is a middle ground, at least what I've been able to find.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love Hacksaw Ridge. I thought that was such a moving, beautiful film. I don't think it necessarily has as much to say as Hacksaw Ridge, as far as the message or what's it's trying to do. It's just trying to kind of just a survival story.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's got to have one of the most crazy birthing scenes I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
That
that
was
scene.
wild.
That scene is. You need to take a smoke break after that scene.
Yeah, it's wild.
But this whole movie feels like Mel Gibson was like given a bet, and as he was like, "I bet you can't make an entire movie in Mayan. You made an entire movie in Hebrew speak in the Passion of the Christ. Now let's see you do Mayan." And Mel Gibson's like, "Okay," and sure enough, he did it. And I think this movie would be a little more respected, but this movie, I think, came out in 2006, and this was around the time when Mel Gibson said the comments and everything surrounding that controversy, so it got really buried. But from what I've been able to see / read online, it's been getting a bit more respect, which I'm all the happier for, because I think this movie is it's a tough watch. I will say that, and I give you all the props in the world for making your way through it. The Queen of Hallmark stomached her way through Apocalypto, so you have my
Thank you.
my eternal respect. But at the same time, it definitely is a challenging watch, and it is what it is. I do recommend to people they sit through it at least once, and then if you don't like it, then you don't like it. But you might like it. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. What is your third choice for me?
So my third choice was on Hulu, and it is the first couple episodes of the original Thundercats, the 85 version. The 2011 series is really good, but the 85 version is the one that everyone remembers. And this is a series that means a lot to me. I watched a lot of it growing up. You know, I remember all these characters like Lion-O, and I can only remember one. I promise I grew up watching this show. This and Thundar the Barbarian, which I just got the Warner Archive Blu-ray. Someone's saying, "You watched Apocalypto?" No.
Yeah, sorry. But, yeah. It's always interesting to kind of watch the nostalgic shows of other people, right? That you don't have an investment in, and then you kind of come into them, and it's kind of an interesting experience. And I, for the most part, enjoyed this. I like the animation, and it kind of reminded me a lot of Transformers, which I have more of a knowledge of, more of an investment in. But I do appreciate that the 80s you had this sort of, I don't know, weird, creative type of adventure, shows they would get on television. I mean, I love Gem and the Holograms. That would be one for me. I don't know. So I think it was right along those lines. He-Man, things like that.
That is incredibly accurate. And Thundercats is one of those shows that the history of the making of and like the cancellation of is just so crazy that in many ways it's more interesting than the show itself. Mm-hmm. But it's gotten several like attempts at like relaunches and remakes that never panned out. The 2011 version came close, but it only got, I think, 2 seasons, 2 really good seasons, but only 2. And then Adam Wingard, who recently directed Godzilla vs. Kong, is saying, "Hey, I've wanted to make a Thundercats movie since I've been alive, so let's do this.
Just keep it animated. We do not need this live action."
He said in interviews it will be animated. It'll be like a hybrid style of animation, but he must have seen Cats and be like, "Nope, none of that, please."
At least Cats had the good songs. This, I mean, it would be terrible in live action, so please no. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed they have a lot going in that pilot, a lot happening. But
yeah, there's a lot to set up with Thundera getting destroyed and Jaren being by their side and establishing that like he's like their mentor. and establishing the lore of the Thundercats and how Lion-O is set to be the guy, and setting up New Thundera and everything involving Mum-Ra and Pantero and just everything under the sun. I think they do a lot with it. I think they cram a lot into 2 episodes, and those story beats do carry on throughout the rest of the show. And I think it's done very well in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to get to watch the first 2 episodes.
Did you have a favorite character?
Let's see. Who's my favorite?
Because I know I'm a Lion-O man myself, and I love the show, but Snarf just ugh.
I was just gonna say, I think it'd be easier to say my least favorite character than my favorite character, and least favorite would definitely be Snarf.
He's like Rick from Rick and Morty, but he says Snarf at the end of every sentence.
Yeah. Maybe Chitara would be my favorite. I don't know.
Oh, Chitara's awesome. I love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. What's the 4th thing you asked me to watch?
So pick number 4 is on Hoopla, and this is Where Eagles Dare. This is starring Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton, and out of all the ones that I recommended, this is the one that you just flat disliked. And I mean, I'm not going to blame you for it. It's definitely hard work. I think for me, I was just at the right age watching with my dad. I always love watching movies with my dad. There's just parts of this that I think are very impressive from a filmmaking standpoint. You'll never see a movie like this be made, at least in terms of, blowing up real things and using practical stunt work. And there's some CG, not CG, but there's like some backgrounds in there that are clearly digital effects. Thank you. They definitely didn't age well, but it's the late 60s. You don't really expect too much from it, but I can see why somebody wouldn't like it, but I did like it. I always have.
I just thought it was really slow. It's still over 2.5 hours long, and it took me 3 days to watch it because I just kept falling asleep. And I was usually kind of starting it sort of late, but nevertheless, I would just be kind of like, oh, okay, okay. And it wasn't really until the last 30, maybe 40 minutes that they start the plan on the castle. The things I felt like finally kind of started getting going, and then it got super violent for that last 40 minutes. Like they're just shooting everyone.
It's Richard Burton, Clint Eastwood, and I can't remember the girl's name off the top of my head. I'm having
Mary
such trouble.
or something like that.
There you go. I'm having such a bad time with names tonight. But it's like those 3 in a snowplow against like an entire Nazi division.
And Richard Burton, I thought he was good in it. Clint Eastwood seemed like he was kind of just there. Like he didn't have a lot of personality in it to me.
Well, his star was on the rise, so I think if I were a studio head, it'd be like, get that Eastwood guy. He's going places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I love Clint Eastwood in movies like Gran Torino. So I know he can bring the charisma, but this just wasn't. It seemed like he was pretty bored. But it's an interesting story. And I actually think that this would be a good movie for a remake. Because I feel like the story is there and it could be really, really good. But I don't know, it just got to be trimmed a little bit. It was just too long.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and I just kind of think, who could be in a Where Eagles Dare remake? My mind drifts towards like someone like a Benedict Cumberbatch in the Richard Burton role.
That's a good pick.
Because Richard Burton is British, Benedict Cumberbatch is British. You need someone like the strong British type to be in a role like that. Mm-hmm. And then in the Clint Eastwood role, my mind kind of draws a blank. Like, it goes to someone weird. Like
there's so many people that I feel like could do a good job, but maybe maybe like Russell Crowe.
I could see that. Yeah, for some reason my mind keeps drifting towards Chris Pratt, even though that.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting.
Star-Lord and Doctor Strange fighting Nazis.
Yeah, I could see that. That would give it some energy, some pizzazz. I could see Christian Bale. He would be good.
Oh, Christian Bale, yeah, that's actually a pretty solid
Yeah.
choice. I mean, he's a chameleon. You know, there's this joke online that Christian Bale like gained 80,000 pounds to play one of the sandworms in the new Dune movie. And when I read that for the first time, I was like, don't put it past him. He might actually just go and do it.
Yeah. Uh,
He got a dad bod to play Dick Cheney, and then
yeah,
he
there you go.
like this big in The Machinist.
Yeah.
So like he knows the extremes of weight loss.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of people who could play. I mean, like I said, it's a pretty bland role that I think anybody could kind of play that sort of hero type. But I think that could be interesting choices. You could even get Clint Eastwood's son.
Oh yeah,
Scott Eastwood. That's his name, right? Scott.
Scott
I think Scott
Eastwood,
Eastwood. Yeah, you get him to play it. Why not?
very nice piece of symmetry there.
Yeah, there we go. All right, what's the last pick?
So my last choice to you was Buried, and this is on the Peacock network, the worst named network in the world. Though they did get most, if not all, of WWE's library. And full disclosure, I only have the free version of Peacock, so I may just have to upgrade myself to the full version in order to watch me some old wrestling. But that's another thing for another time. But
you didn't pick that for me to watch because that wouldn't have been pretty. Old wrestling.
This guy should have died. How did he kick out at 2?
I'll watch something like Fighting with My Family. I'm not watching that.
or The Wrestler.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah. So
but my last choice to you was Buried, and this is essentially, I described it in the episode as Ryan Reynolds in a box for 90 minutes. So from that alone, what did you think?
I liked it. I thought it was a very good little thriller. It kind of reminded me of Locke. Have you ever seen Locke?
Oh, I love Locke. Basically, Tom Hardy's life falling apart as he is driving towards somewhere on the highway and talking to a very tiny Tom Holland.
Yep. Yeah, Tom Hardy could be good in the Richard Burton role also.
Oh yeah, that he'd be perfect.
Be good. He would be fun. Somebody out there, Hollywood, let us make your cast your movie for
make us casting people.
We'll be executive producers. It'll be great. Yeah. So I mean, it's a pretty simple movie. Obviously, it's one of these kind of one-man band type movies, like 127 Hours or Castaway, or where it's just basically one person having to try to figure out how to survive. And I mean, the ending was pretty devastating.
Oh yeah.
They get so close and you think he's gonna and the sand just keeps coming in and in and in. I mean, I guess they had to end it that way because that was what really happened, right?
I personally can't remember, like off the top of my head.
I don't know if I think it's based on a true story, right?
Quick to the Google machine.
I don't know if it was a true story or not, but anyway, it was a pretty devastating ending because you wanted him to be saved. And this premiered at Sundance.
No, it's analyzing whether.
No, it doesn't say. I guess that's not. But I don't know why they chose to give such a sad ending then.
I mean, when you're that far under the ground, your chances fall between slim and none.
Yeah.
But it's movies like this that do confirm in my mind that Ryan Reynolds is actually a very good actor. Like, I think Deadpool has now painted him into this corner of being the guy who is like, hey, we're in a movie. What do you all think about that? And he's just going to be like that for the remainder of his career. See Detective
Very
Pikachu
meta
and Free Guy, which is hopefully coming out very soon.
someday.
I'm afraid he's going to be that person for the remainder of his career. And if you see movies like this or The Proposal or something like that, he can act. It's just
Mm-hmm.
he just unfortunately was in a lot of crap, and so that just forced him into a certain like group, I guess. Like no one should have to be in the Green Lantern movie.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, he did have a bad run there for a while of some really lame movies. But yeah, this it was probably smart to do a little movie like this, a Sundance movie, to kind of get his dramatic cred back up again. Because he is very appealing and you feel for him. But this is all just about that sense of claustrophobia that they get. And yeah, and they also don't push their luck. I think it's just barely over 90 minutes. So that helps too.
And Reynolds was in this A24 movie called The Captive. I've never seen it, but I've always been meaning to, because say what you want about A24, but they have a way of taking like really odd choices for actors and they're just doing like amazing things with them. See Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems for proof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think they're, at the very least, you can always count an A24 film to be interesting and different and challenging. Sometimes it can be convoluted and ridiculous and terrible, but it's still something that you're going to be challenged by.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of really great stuff at Sundance is A24. So yeah, there we go. That's the 5 picks. And are you proud of me for watching all 5?
Hey, you made it through Apocalypto, so you have a winner is you. And
thank you. Well, let us know if you've seen any of these 5 films, what you think. And if you have something you'd like me to watch, then sign up for our Patreon and you can make me watch stuff and review it on Rotten Tomatoes. There's lots of other fun benefits. You should check it out. And Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. Then there's, of course, my YouTube channel, which is just called Ryan Cam. I am actually working on a couple of collaborations with a couple of other YouTubers. I'm still ironing out the details, but those are going to be coming up in the very near future, and I'm very excited for that. And then also, coming up this week, I'll be dropping my big deep dive into the film La La Land, and I've been looking forward to releasing that video for a while now, and looking forward to talking about the movie. And then this week for the AFI project, I ended up releasing videos for The Silence of the Lambs and pretty much everything I promised myself that I would release. I'm very proud of myself. And then this coming week, I'll be releasing videos for In the Heat of the Night, Forrest Gump, and All the President's Men. That's coming up on the AFI project. And then this coming Sunday will be my I Finally Watched for Whisper of the Heart. So a lot of content coming up. If you haven't checked me out, please do.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. And also make sure you're following the Hallmark podcast. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews at Rachel's Reviews. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. And like I said, we have our Patreon group, which has some really great benefits. And we have our merch store, which has lots of fun merch over there. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.